Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by Dissociated. This is a channel that tries to erase the stigma around dissociative identity disorder and educate people about the psychology and realities behind it. My name is Nin, I'm the host of the system and the person who runs this channel, and today I wanted to talk to you about system responsibility. Some people seem to be under the impression that when you have dissociative identity disorder, it's kind of like every man for himself. If somebody makes a mistake, then because with DID, everybody is an individual, every alter has their own memory, their own opinions about life and the world around them. They'll have their own experiences and perspectives based off what they have experienced as themselves, and therefore will act in different ways. A lot of people seem to think that because there is this distinction between them, everybody is responsible for only their actions. Unfortunately, if you do have DID or OSDD, which is otherwise specified dissociative disorder, because everybody shares one body, it means that everybody has to take responsibility for what happens if you are in that body. If you hurt somebody or you make a mistake, even if it wasn't something that you specifically did, maybe it was one of your alters, maybe you didn't even know it happened, the only people who can take responsibility for those actions are the people who live in that one body. Sometimes this can seem really unfair because you might not have authorized that action, you might not agree with the action, you might not know that it even happened, but if somebody in the system is refusing to own up and take responsibility for the action that was committed, that's not fair on the person who experienced the backlash of whatever mistake you made. Even though alters have their own dreams and aspirations, may want to do their own things with their life, you only have one and you only have one body. That means that whatever consequences come from the actions of one alter, it will affect all of you. All of you have to deal with the repercussions of the life that you choose to live. It may not be an independent decision or a personal decision, but this is why it's so important to work on system communication and try and understand each other better. If you are going behind each other's backs to try and twist the way your life is going to better suit yourself, the repercussions of your actions are going to be even more unpredictable and powerful, or not just you, but the whole of the system. This can mean that things are more easily thrown into disarray and confusion. It can make it harder to live a functional life because nothing seems to be going to plan. One example of this could be if somebody takes alcohol, drugs, puts something into the body's system, everybody is going to have to deal with the repercussions of that. If you did something whilst under the influence, that is still your responsibility, even if you didn't choose to have those things in your bloodstream. Any actions that are taken against someone, even if you didn't personally do it, if somebody said something that upset a friend, especially if you're a host or a primary protector or somebody who is in a position of power within your system or has a position of responsibility, it's your responsibility to make things right with that person, even if you didn't upset them specifically. That is a part of your bigger being, even as everybody's individuals. If someone in your system has hurt someone, you need to work together to make amends. And if you're unable to work together, then somebody is going to have to step up and take responsibility for the actions of your system as a whole. This doesn't exclude persecutors. If you don't know what a persecutor is an alter that may act out in ways that are harmful to the body or to the system that they live in because they hold so much trauma and pain that they're unable to see much beyond it and may have unhealthy coping mechanisms. This doesn't make them bad people or bad alters, it just means that they are suffering and that they need to be listened to. If you don't know about this yet and you'd like to learn about it now, you can click on this card in the description, which tells you all about persecutor alters and why they are the way they are and how you can help them. A lot of people seem to think that persecutors are a completely different type of alter and therefore completely just not included in everything else that's said about communication and responsibility, because a lot of persecutors don't feel like they're part of the system. They feel like it's them against the system. A lot of other alters within a system may feel the same way, that a persecutor is a threat or not part of the larger community of alters within one body. This is going to cause a divide between you and the rest of the alters in your system, and it will not help you take responsibility for your actions or learn to live a more collaborative and successful life. If a persecutor has said something that has upset somebody externally, you can't use the excuse of, oh, well, that wasn't me, so not my problem. Sorry you were hurt, but no, you need to make amends for it. And explaining is always a good idea. Maybe explain the way this persecutor feels the way they do, that they're trying to protect the system because they've been hurt so much in the past, but know that that is not an excuse. It's not an excuse to waiver your responsibility just because it wasn't you specifically that undertook those actions. And that can feel very, very unfair, especially because you might not have wanted any of these things to happen. This is still something that you need to step up to the plate and deal with. It's not fair to be given responsibility over people that you might not like, that you can't communicate with, and that you may be trying to control but can't. Everybody in a system is their own individual, their own person, and has a right to do what they think is best. Just because everybody is unique and individual doesn't mean that you can shy away from the consequences of your actions as a community in a whole. Just because something's unfair doesn't mean that you can shirk your responsibilities. You may not have asked for any of this stuff to happen. It may seem like just another thing that you have to do, another unfair thing to remember that's come with you learning that you may have DID, whether you have a diagnosis or not, whether you're just suspecting that something's not quite right. And that's scary. It's scary to even think that you might not be the only one in your body without even starting to delve into why DID exists. It's hard, and yeah, it's really unfair. And a lot of people don't understand why DID exists or why you could have different people in your head and that it's not all just you. But that doesn't change the fact that if you want to live a healthy life, these are the things that you're going to have to come to terms with. It doesn't matter if you can't do that all in one go. It doesn't matter if it takes time to settle and to learn what works for you and your system. It doesn't matter if you made assumptions and they turned out to be wrong. If you placed judgments on who you thought you were or who you thought the people around you were, and it comes to light that when given new information, things aren't the way you expected them to go. All this stuff can be very overwhelming, and it's okay if you struggle to take on these kind of responsibilities all in one go at first. If you make a mistake or you feel like you haven't been doing some of the things we suggest, that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. There's no wrong way to have DID, but there are more morally sound ways to deal with fallouts and disorder and drama that can come from having multiple people within one body. Being respectful to the people around you, as well as being aware of the things that are going on inside your system and inside your head, is a lot to think about. But it is the only way that you can be fair to the people around you as well as the people inside you. And like I said, it's okay if you don't get this at first. It's okay if you disagree with me. We're not a font of knowledge. We're learning just like you are. We like to share what we know and what we've learned through research, what we've learned through having a look at scientific studies and journals and published books that tell us, hey, this is how the brain works, and maybe this is how it would be best to react to having a disorder like this, based on the biology around why it exists. And of course, our own personal experiences. But that doesn't mean that our advice is going to work for everybody. It doesn't mean that the things that we've learned are going to be able to apply to everybody who watches these videos, whether you have DID or not. It doesn't mean that we're incapable of making mistakes, or that I haven't messed up before and not taken responsibility for things that others have done, because it doesn't seem fair. Everybody has to start somewhere. It's not fair to put yourself on a pedestal and expect yourself to be perfect. It's okay to mess up, as long as you know what you want to do differently next time and try and make amends for the situation that you've put yourself in. A lot of people, when they hear about DID and OSDD, especially people who are uneducated on the topic or don't believe it exists, like to think that people are using it as a way to escape reality. They think about DID as different personalities, separate states of being, separate awareness. They're just doing this to shirk their responsibility. They're doing this because they want to experience being different people, because they don't want to take responsibility for their actions, because they want to play around. Having DID or OSDD, having an experience of multiplicity like this, actually means that you have to take on a lot more responsibility than your average neurotypical person, a person without a mental health disorder. You have to be aware of what's going on, not only externally, but internally, and work on this constantly. This is not an easy disorder to have, and it's definitely not a way to shirk responsibility. It's not a way to escape life. It's a way of coping with life and severe trauma. It's not something that is easily escapable. That's why the disorder exists. Sometimes things might happen that you're unable to make amends for, or that it's not your place to try and make amends for. In situations like that, sometimes the first step, or even the only step, is trying to communicate with the alter or alters who caused or were involved in that issue. It's not fair to expect yourself to be the only one to take responsibility for everybody's actions. Everybody has to share that responsibility, share the responsibility of being a system and existing in one body and existing in this world, even if you didn't choose to exist, even if you don't want to exist. This is something that you can share if you want to. Talking to each other and learning to communicate can be a very difficult thing to do. It can be very complicated. Not all alters will have good communication with each other, especially at the start of your journey of discovering your DID or OSDD. It may be difficult to have any communication with other alters at all. Talking to each other about why things like this happened. What can I do to support you? How can we avoid this happening in the future? Is there anything you feel you can do to make up for the problems that were caused? And asking for help. Your system is there to support you, and your system is there to make sure that you all get through life as painlessly as possible. That is not an easy thing to do. It is going to be complicated. People are going to make mistakes, and people will judge you and be confused about why you act the way you do, or where you got your information from. You may not all have been created equal. You will not all have been created for specific purposes that may mean that you will all get on well, because a lot of alters don't get on, especially persecutors and protectors, for example. Having differing opinions and not wanting to take responsibility for actions can cause rifts between system members. This is why it's so important to try and understand where everybody is coming from, and that you don't take on all the responsibility just on yourself. It does need to be shared throughout the system. Everybody needs to be doing things to take care of the body, like maybe one alter or a few alters is in charge of showering or doing chores or something like that, obviously based on who is capable of doing that. You wouldn't necessarily want to ask a trauma holder who is in a lot of pain and really struggling to manage the awareness of what they went through to then be in charge of doing chores and things like that. That's up to your discretion as a system and what works for you guys best. But expecting one alter, for example the host or the primary protector, to do everything and take on all the responsibility for the system is not fair. You need to talk amongst yourself about what is the best way, the most effective way to measure out your time and to share the responsibilities that come with being a system, as well as how you will act if something goes wrong or if somebody makes a mistake, how you're going to accept responsibility for that action and for what has happened as a whole, rather than just an individual who is part of a whole. If communicating using thought or thinking back or trying to use your inner world is too difficult, this can be quite an involved process, especially if you're new to your disorder. There are other methods of communication you can use. External communication methods are generally much easier. We have a video on both of these different kind of areas of communication with lots of tips as to how to go about them. The two videos that we have on this are split into part 1, external methods of communicating with your system, and part 2, internal methods of communicating with your system. But just like I said before, it's everybody's responsibility. Not just one person should be leaving notes. You can all communicate together. It needs people to have a back and forth. You need to be collaborating on projects and giving each other something to work with. Reach out to each other. If you'd like to check out those videos, you can find them in the description box below, and some of them will probably be in a little card that's popped up above my head somewhere. I hope that this video has been slightly enlightening and maybe helpful for you, and please remember that if you need help, you can reach out to the community we have here around DissociaDID, or you can join support groups on Facebook for DID and OSDD, and know that you're not alone. If you have problems, you can ask people who are going through similar things. They may not be able to tell you what to do, but they can give you insight on their personal situations and advice. It's not something that you have to go through on your own, and it's not something that you have to figure out completely in the dark. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comment section below and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. If not, we do have a wonderful community and lots of you guys are really good at answering each other and giving opinions and advice. I hope that if you enjoy this video or you would like to learn more about DID, OSDD and other mental disorders like PTSD and BPD, that you'll stay on the channel to learn more. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell button, as that's how you'll know that new videos are being released. And follow us on our other social media to see what we're up to. We're working on a podcast and that will be coming soon, so if you'd like to have some sneak peeks as to how that's being created and what our plans for the future are, please do follow Sanity Podcast, which you can find links to in the description box below. We look forward to seeing all of you as we start our new projects in the future, and I hope that you're all doing well. Lots of love, everybody. Bye.